And let me switch so I can see. There we go. All right. So guys, what we're looking at, like I said, with Unit 2, with our logic unit, is you're going to learn a bunch of different rules. And there's not really much in terms of like needing like a calculator or calculations. So that's what's going to feel a little bit different about this particular unit, right? So as we go through it, and actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I think I have one in here already that I wanted to use. No, that's fine. There's 3 rules that we're going to talk about today, and you'll see what I mean. So if we flip over, just so that you can see where we're going with the unit, this first day, the 3 rules are negation, conjunction, and disjunction. So usually every year somebody says it reminds them of like the, what is it called? Conjunction, junction, what's your function? Do you guys know what I'm talking about? Schoolhouse Rock or something? I never learned Schoolhouse Rock, but every year somebody says it and they're like, yeah, that's what it is. So I believe them. All right. And then tomorrow, or the next time I see you, I guess it'll be Friday, we're going to do some practice. We got some puzzles. We're going to learn a little bit more and then just practice and review. You're going to notice also throughout the packet that some questions are crossed out when we get later into the units. It's because we're going to skip a day at the end. And so any questions that would have been on that day, you might just literally see a little X through. Perfectly fine. Just means you're not responsible for it. Right? Otherwise, let's get started right here with this part of it. So when it's saying, first part, when we have a negation, if we negate something, all right, means that we are going to be changing the value there. Let me grab my, here we go. That's helpful. Have my little note packet next to me here. All right. So the first part, if we are negating something, we're going to insert the word not into the statement. So that's the first part of it, is that we insert the word not into the statement. And now the cool thing about logic, there's symbols for everything. So the symbol for when we're going to negate something or have negation is it looks like that little squiggle, which I know some of you guys, if you take Spanish, know that is like tilde, or if you speak Spanish. I do not, so I've always learned that from my students. It can mean a lot of things. In math, that can mean similar. That's the little squiggle that goes over like the equal sign for congruent. But in logic, that means not. So that's how we'd actually go through and say it, right? So when you look at this first part here, we say P represents the statement, Albany is the capital of New York. Lovely. All right, so when you see this little squiggle P, even though it's tempting to call it squiggle P, we'd actually read that as not P. But we're going to write out the statement that would represent not P. So if we're saying Albany is the capital of New York, then the negation would just be as simple as Albany is not the capital of New York. So that's the first part of it. Oops. But then let me ask you guys, is Albany the capital of New York? Yeah, it is. So if the first statement is true, then what does that make this statement when we negate it and say Albany is not the capital of New York? It becomes what? False, right? So when you negate something, it changes the truth value. So I want you to write yourself that little note up here, that this changes the truth value of the statement. So if I have a true statement and then I negate it and change it to, Albany is not the capital, now it's a false statement. And the same would go for what if it was false first and then I negate it? Well, then it'll flip to be true. So when you look at the second one, it says, let's let Q represent the statement that 8 plus 9 equals 10. So there's our statement. What would not Q look like? Anybody know symbolically how you would insert the word not into that expression right there? And you look like you got a thought. What are you thinking? Say it louder, what? Oh, that's a good guess. That would change it to congruent. So it wouldn't change it and make it not, but I don't blame you for thinking, like, how do you put that symbol in there? Lennon, were you thinking of something else? Yeah, if I want to change it from equals to not equals, Exactly. We take the equal sign, we put a little slash through it to show, hey, those are not equal. All right. And then in this case, this is an example of where 8 plus 9 wasn't equal to 10 anyway. So this was a false statement. So now when we change it to not equals, now it changes it to a true statement. All right. Now the last part, these I think are fun. Once again, I'm your math teacher, so what I think is fun could be different than what you think is fun. But down at the bottom, when it says we have a little truth table, a truth table is just showing like what are all the possible things that can happen for a given statement. So if I give you some statement P, whatever it is, it's either a true statement or it's a false statement. Those are the two things that can happen. All right. We can't use anything that's like an in-between. So like saying like, I like pizza. No, that's not something that you can judge as true or false because I don't know who I is. It would be like the grass is green, the sky is blue. Stuff that we can say is true or false. Right? If we then have not P next to it, all that's going to do is switch the truth value. So a true statement would then turn to false. And if it was a false statement to begin with, it would switch to true. So this little like organized table here, that's called a truth table. And then you have a fun little comic, if you want to read it, but that's up to you. Otherwise, any question on the first page? So nothing crazy. When we go to the second page, then you get to see a little bit more involved truth table, but we're going to build it together. So when you flip it on over here, you've got conjunction. Does anybody recognize that word conjunction? Thinking in terms of like English class. It's a connector word. And now, to be honest with you, if I didn't teach this, I might not know, at least not with certainty, what a conjunction was. But what I can tell you, it's a word that connects two statements with the word and. Oops, I'm hitting like the staple at the end there. So with the word and. So a conjunction connects two statements with the word and. So I said it feels a little like English class today. That's okay. There's a symbol for it. The nice, easy way that I remember this symbol, it actually just looks like a caret key, you guys, like on your calculator. Looks like that. But I always think of it as a capital A without the slash. If you can think of it like that, it helps me remember that, like, all right, it literally looks like the A in and. Right? So down here, when it gives us two little statements that P is raining outside, which definitely was true earlier today, and then Q is I'm carrying an umbrella. If I see this, I would actually read that as P and Q. And then if it just says write out what that statement would be, we're just inserting those words into the statement. So in for P, we would read as it is raining. Oops, raining outside. And then we'd use the word and then we'd keep rolling. I am carrying an umbrella. So hopefully any of the ones we have to write out, we try to keep them short and sweet so that you don't have to write like a full paragraph. But that's what that statement would look like. So the nice thing is we're going to use a lot of just the abbreviation, so you can get a lot done with writing very little, which is kind of nice. Now, when you talk about an and statement, there's a truth value that goes with it. And to figure it out, you have this little scenario. So the scenario is saying, all right, your parents say to you, if you mow the lawn and you vacuum the house, we'll give you $50. Right? Maybe like an allowance or something. As you read through each of these little cases, what I want you to ask yourself is, will you get the $50? That's the question we're going to ask. So will you get the $50? So what I mean by that, next to each case, so it's saying like case one, you mow the lawn, you vacuum the house. I want you to just write a little yes or no. Based on the promise from your parents, yes, you get the money, or no, you wouldn't. So go ahead and read through each of the four cases and decide what you think based on that promise there. All right, so I think pretty much everybody's in agreement for the first one. If you mow the lawn and you vacuum the house, I think I saw everybody said, yeah, you'd get the money. What about the second one, you guys? What'd you come up with here? Yes or no? And what'd you come up with? No, why not? Yeah, you didn't do one of them, so no, you're not going to get the money. If you don't mow the lawn, but you do vacuum the house, what'd you guys say? Yeah. All right, and then if you're super lazy, you don't do anything. Yeah, unless your parents are super nice, they're not giving you anything. All right, so based on that promise, if you mow the lawn and you vacuum the house, the only case that we said yes, you'd get the money to was if you did both parts. So what I want you to take from this, any yes is equivalent to saying that you have a true statement. Any no answer is equivalent to saying that you have a false statement. So that means this guy was true. Oops. And then here, false, false, and false. Now, you guys, you can always use just capital T and capital F for true and false. I am fully guilty of occasionally my handwriting gets like smushed, and I know that. But please make sure that you don't somehow combine like a T and an F. Every once in a while, I get like that, and I'm like, what? So make sure that it's super clear that you're trying to say something's true or false, or just write the word out, okay? Now, let's take this down to the table. So if we look, there's 4 cases this time that match the 4 cases up here. So we're going to consider the mowing the lawn, the P part of this. The Q would be the vacuuming the house. And then the P and Q, this was like, yeah, you get the money or not. Right? So case 1 was you did mow the lawn and you did vacuum. So we would say it's true that you mowed the lawn, true that you vacuum, and it was true that you got the money. So that was like a win-win right there. Case 2, you mowed the lawn, so that was true, but you didn't vacuum, so that was false. And then you didn't end up getting the money, so the whole thing came out false. And then we can keep going. The third one, you don't mow the lawn, so that part's a false statement. You vacuum the house, though, that's true, but that still wasn't enough to get you the money, so the whole statement was false. And then we talked about that last case. You didn't do anything, so this was false, that was false, and you definitely didn't get any money for it. And so this is the rule for any and statement that you're going to end up with. And so when we go and evaluate them later, you're going to come back to this little table to be able to say, like, all right, if the first 2 parts are true, I know the whole thing is true. Or if the first part's false, thanks, Tristan, and the second part's true, then the whole statement comes out false. Right? So what I want to do is write like a general rule here. So for and, right, I'm going to say the only case that comes out true is that first one. And that's because both P and Q are true. So the only case that comes out true is when P and Q are both true. Interesting, I know you missed the first part. I will give you a packet that you can copy from. Okay. Let me see, I might actually have one up here. Yeah. So you can backtrack if you have time, otherwise we're going to jump on steps. Okay. All right, guys, any questions on that part? I only have one more rule. So we talked about if you negate something. We talked about if you connect with the word and then the last one that we're going to do today is a disjunction. Any guess on what the connector word for this one is? Remember disjunction? It's okay. That's why we're going over it. So this one, you're going to connect 2 statements with the word or. That's the connector word this time. So instead of and, we're switching it up to or. Of course, there's a symbol that goes with it. So the symbol, take the and symbol and flip it completely upside down. It basically just looks like a little V. That's the symbol for or, is it looks like that little like peace sign, a little V symbol there, right? So for this one, when it's saying like, let R stand for I'm playing baseball and S stand for I'm practicing the piano, if we were to write out the statement R or S, you would just be pulling right from those statements there. So R, we would write it out as I am playing baseball. And then here comes your connector word, or, and then S. I am practicing the piano. Period. So part of tonight's homework will really just be like, can you put together the statements using the right symbols, the and, the or, if there's a little squiggle, and put in the word not. And then some of it's going to be evaluating the truth part of it. So let's look at the truth piece of this one. So same scenario as last time. Your parents say, okay, if you mow the lawn or you vacuum the house, we'll give you $50. So they changed one word in their statement. So if you mow the lawn or you vacuum, we'll give you $50. So we're going to ask ourselves the same question. Would you get the money? Would you get the $50? So you have the exact same 4 cases to consider. But I want you to think about, how does having the word or change the statement versus when you had the word and? So take a minute and read through, give you a second to think first, and then we'll chat. So we're looking at the truth values of these things. As we go through this one, hopefully it'll make more sense of what you're down back here. Okay, and then if not, let me know. I'm also recording the first case. You could go back and rewatch the first 10 minutes of the video, and you'd see the first 10 minutes. Okay. So I see some slightly different. I'm not sure. Hold up. It's smart. We're looking at it. Would you need the money? Oh, did you do the table already? No, you're dead on. Don't even. No, I was just looking at this too. I'm curious to hear. You did a great job. Good. Look at your step ahead of me. Good. So I only saw like 1 or 2 papers that maybe had slightly different answers, and it was really only on the first one. I think you guys all agreed on everything else. So for this, if you mow the lawn and you vacuum the house, so you did both, would you end up getting the money? So the parents just said you had to do one or the other, and we'll give you the money. So think about it. If this was actually you at home and your parents said do this or that, but you did both, would they still give you the money? I think so. All right. So it's kind of like you did like bonus points here. So I would say yes, absolutely, which means this is a true statement here. If you mow the lawn, but you didn't vacuum the house, you guys, what did you say to the second one? Yes or no? Yeah, it's still a yes, because by changing this to an or, it kind of implies you only have to do one, right? So this is still a yes, which makes it true. So this time you didn't mow the lawn, but you did vacuum. Yeah, you're still good to go. The only case where you're not making any money is the last one. So if you didn't do either of them, that's where you should have had a no. And I think just about everybody had that as their answers there. So how that carries down to the table. Same setup. And what you're going to notice is as we create these little truth tables, we will always make those first 2 columns exactly the same. First case will always be true and true. Second case will always be true and then false. Third case, we do false and then true. So we flip-flop the order. And then last case is both of them being false. So we'll always keep that consistent so that we don't confuse ourselves, right? And then the last part of it, that turns into true, 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 false. So when you have or, which is what you have going on here, versus the last one, this was a big old and, right? It's much more forgiving. For or, for it to be true, right? So I'm going to say to be true, all you need is one part of it. So they could both be true or just one piece, and that's going to be good enough, right? I'm going to say you just need one part to be true, not necessarily both. Right? And so in case I'm not making that clear, I'm talking about the P or the Q part of it. Any questions on that piece? All right, so now that we have all the rules, let's see if we can actually practice with them. So on to the next page. There's parts A and B for each question here. I want to do all the part A's and then look at all the part B's. Is that a stretch, Bree, or a question? Just a stretch. That's okay. All right. Stretch away, my dear. All right. So when we hit the last page, you're given a couple statements at the top. So it's saying S stands for there is school on Labor Day. Do you guys remember when Labor Day is? Yeah, beginning of September. It's the first Monday in September. Good. All right. Labor Day is a holiday. All right. And then we work on Labor Day. So those are the three statements. Don't worry about if they're true or false. Just those are the three statements. So part A says write the sentences in symbolic form. So we just want to take all of these sentences here and turn them into statements with S, H, and W. All right. So when you read through it, what I want you to figure out is what are the statements? What are the connector words? So for number one, when it says we work on Labor Day, that right there, that's statement W. So I can put W underneath it. Or is my connector word. So the symbol for or is like that V shape. And then Labor Day is a holiday. That's statement H right there. So now as you write it, you can squeeze it underneath the sentence itself, or you can just put it in the space for A. So you could put W or H. That's what that would look like. So when we go to do the next one, if you want to just put it in the line for A, that's fine. So number two, it's saying Labor Day is a holiday and we do not work on Labor Day. So you can see the connector word kind of breaking it up. First part, the Labor Day is a holiday. That is H. The symbol for and looks like the capital A without the bar. So it kind of looks like that caret key. What about this though? If we work on Labor Day, right, is W. How do you say we do not work on Labor Day? Bree, what do you know?
Is it W with a little squiggle?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the little squiggle. And honestly, I'm perfectly accepting of that answer right there. It's the little squiggle in front of the W. So we would read the statement as like H and not W, but I'll take squiggle W. That works for me. So when you see that extra word not in there, that's where the squiggle part's coming in. You got it. All right. So number three, there is school on Labor Day, or Labor Day is not a holiday. You get a 10-second head start. See if you can fill in. What would be the letters that would represent that one? Okay, so look at the statements up above and what letter goes with it. So when we read there's school on Labor Day, that's the letter S. Or is the little V symbol. And then here we have another not in there. Instead of saying Labor Day is a holiday, we're trying to say Labor Day is not a holiday. So that would be a little squiggle H. How'd we do? I'm looking for anything other than just staring. Caleb, you're kicking butt. We got this. Lennon, how you doing? We're doing okay? Okay. You guys got one last one there where it says Labor Day is a holiday and we work on Labor Day. So there's no word not in there. So we're just writing it directly. So Labor Day is a holiday. That's our H. And looks like the A without the bar. And then we work on Labor Day. That's our W. So when you're trying to create the sentences, don't think about if they're true or false. Not a problem at this point. You just write them as they are. Then when part B says, now figure out if the statement is true or false. Then we'd have to go back and think about it. Bless you. Now with this one, I purposely try to come up with statements that you could figure out whether they're true or false. Otherwise, I'll just tell you if they are. But if you look, school on Labor Day, no, you guys, school always starts right after Labor Day, sometimes before, but it's not on. So this is a false statement, right? Labor Day is a holiday. That's definitely true, right? And now as for whether or not we work on Labor Day, I'm going to use me. I do not work on Labor Day, so I'm going to say that that's a false statement. So don't overthink it. Just roll with those as being your truth values. So now when we hit here and we have to evaluate W or H, we're just going to write it out next to it. So the W statement was false, and then or the H statement was true. And because this is an or one, this is where you can go back in and look at your chart and say, okay, false for the first part, true for the second part. So I'm going to flip my page. Feel free, you can hold still if you like. If I have false for the first part, true for the second part, the whole thing's true because all I needed was one part to be true, and I had that. So the whole statement comes out to be true here. So part B, we would say that that full statement is true. And then you would do the same thing with the next one. Now, because this one has the little squiggle, you look at it a tiny bit differently, but I'll explain what I mean. So H is true, so just write that down. And not, W up top is a false statement, so we put not false. Right? You want to evaluate with a little squiggle first, you guys. If we're saying it's not false, what are we really saying about this part? It's true, right? So you would switch that to true, and then we'd evaluate, right? So because this is an and statement, if I have true and true, here's where you mowed the lawn, you vacuum the house, you got the money. This whole thing comes out to be true there. Right? But that's just an example of how you go through and evaluate them. So with number 3, I want you to try that part on your own. Just write down what they are first, and then see if you can put it together to evaluate whether the whole statement is true or the whole statement is false. Okay. Okay. Which I don't care. There's a little room. You can stretch a little. Okay, I'm comfortable with it. Awesome. Good. You always impress me in this class. All right, so for this, if we fill in for S just from up top, that's false, or not H, so not true. And then we just said if it's not true, that's the same as saying it's false. And if you remember at the charts, whether it was and or, anytime it was a double false, the whole thing came out to be false here. So the whole thing comes out to be false. And then just to finish these ones up, the last one, we have H and W. So H is true and W is false. All right, and is the stricter one. If I'm going to say I have true and false, and if you're not sure, come back here and take a look. So if it starts true, it ends false, the whole thing's going to be false because I need both parts to be true for an and statement to come out true. Hey, Mrs. Fish. And so this one comes out false as well. Does anybody have any questions on these top parts? Okay. I don't even want to take you through the full bottom part, but let's do like 2 of them. You're going to see some like this on the homework where they don't even tell you what the statements are. You're just going to be given kind of generic statements and saying, okay, P and Q, whatever they are, they're going to represent true statements. So P and Q are going to be true. And then let R and S, whatever they are, represent false statements. So when we practice these, you're just going back to your truth tables and thinking, how do I evaluate? So like if you do the very first one, just write right beneath it what the truth value is. So P is true, Q is true, and then you can either keep the symbol or if it makes it easier to write the word, put the words. So that V shape, that's an or. So if I have true or true, the whole darn thing should come out how? You remember this one? Maybe. Mercedes, what do you think? If they're both true, what would the whole thing be? Absolutely. Yep. Excellent. And you would do the same thing for all of them. Now, the last one I want to do with you is actually we're going to jump from number 1 all the way to number 5. Because you have a bigger statement here and you got some parentheses. So you guys, I know PEMDAS, like when you're doing order of operations, the same thing holds true here. If I have something in parentheses, I do that part first. So when you go to evaluate this one, kind of ignore the stuff at the end and just worry about the stuff inside the parentheses first. So S we're told is a false statement. So I'm going to put false underneath that. And then we got and Q. Okay. If this is and feel free, I don't expect you to have any of it memorized yet. Come back and look at your and chart. For the and chart, if it starts false and it finishes true, nah, it's not enough. I need everything to be true for the whole thing to come out true. So I know that inside the parentheses, that's a false statement. Then bring the rest of it down. So now we would have and not P. Well, P is true. And then we keep going. Well, not true is the same as false. And whether it's and or, if I have two false statements, this was the case where you didn't do any work, so you didn't get any money. This is going to come out false here. All right. Any questions? It's different, right? Yeah, you're like, yes. You'll get used to it. So in case today you're like, I get it, but it seems like a lot of info, don't let it be overwhelming. You have homework tonight, which is in your new packet. When you look at the new packet, you guys, it's the first page. You have a space to put the little truth table. Just copy down. So this is your 4 cases. Here's the and, here's the or. You're just putting them next to each other versus creating 2 separate tables. That's it. And then you're going to go through. You're going to change it from words into symbols and then evaluate. And then on the back, you have some that are just straight old practice. So you're just using those truth tables, to practice. And then the last ones, you're turning it from symbols back into words. Okay. So that's what you're working on for tonight, with the goal being that tomorrow when we meet, we can practice a little bit more. Em, what are you thinking? Say it louder for me. I'm so sorry. Oh, for the first chart here, I always want you to set it up. Good question. Always start your 2 cases with both true, then the first one true, the second false, then flip-flop, go false, then true, and then double false. Yep. Yes. So basically, you just have to look at all 4 cases, and we try to keep them in the same order so that we can kind of memorize what the chart looks like. But yes, great question. Yeah, always start here, and then you can copy. This is your and then this guy is your or. So you can just copy that last column from your charts there. Good question, because I want to make sure that that's clear. Any other questions you guys can think of? Now we're cool? Jose, did we finish everything? Yeah? Nice. Okay.
Mm.